Welcome to the ADNA Presents. Today we have a very special guest, Seth Krugliack. He is the founder and CEO of Five Guys Named Mo and Snackly. Thank you for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's a lot of fun.
I'm very excited to ask you what you love about audio description.
First and foremost, I love that we can serve an underserved audience and we can make an impact. I've been in the editorial and side of show business for a long time. And the reason I got in the industry was to get the satisfaction of making an impact to an audience, whether that's through editing or writing or directing. We've spent years and years doing promos, and there was always satisfaction of knowing that something we created impacted an audience and had them tuned to a specific channel at a specific time to watch a specific show. So with audio description, I think it's even more impactful to that audience to have them really get a better sense of what the filmmaker's intent was and what's going on the screen. And with audio description, our two most important rules are first to serve the audience so they can have a better experience and understanding of what's going on. And the second priority is to the filmmaker so that you can convey what the filmmaker's intent was. And those are the first two rules of everything we do. So it's incredibly gratifying to both serve the audience and serve the filmmaker.
In your experience with editorial outside of audio description, are there some similarities to audio description or some differences that you could share with our audience?
Well, actually, we're newer to the audio description business. It's a line of business that we developed during the early days of the pandemic, where our regular editorial business had decreased as everyone's did. And I was really looking around at sort of what opportunities were there that we could use the skill sets that we had developed in 30 years of doing audio and video and color and, the whole post-production gamut. Also, we had spent years and years producing tens of thousands of promos. And as I really sort of was trying to figure out what new lines of business we could offer, audio description seemed to be the perfect fit because it really utilized all the skill sets that we had developed over the past 30 years. The writing is so similar. It requires sort of a very specific skill set in terms of describing and the use of nouns and verbs without a lot of flowery other language is something that you learn how to do when you're doing promo or trailers. The recording of the voice and directing the voice talent, the voice actors, is something that we've been doing for years, whether it's in ADR or it's in promo or trailers or even group Walla. Getting a good recording of voice talent and voice actors is something we've been doing for years and years in our booth or remotely. We have 2 mix rooms. We have lots and lots of experience mixing television and movies and short form and independent films. So audio description just sort of checked every box of a skill set that we already had developed, but it was a completely new line of business for us. So when I sort of stumbled upon it, I spent a lot of time watching as much programming as I could with audio description. So I got a sense of what was working, what wasn't, what was good, what wasn't. And then we convinced a client to send us half a dozen shows. And, our pitch to them was, give us the shows, we'll do it. If you don't like it, you don't have to pay for it. And it gave me the opportunity to really sit down and write and record and mix and really learn, from the ground up what worked and what didn't work. And then from there, we went to other clients that we've had and really developed a process that I think is different than the way most people are doing audio description, which is very efficient while at the same time delivering a very, very high level of quality to the client and to the audience. And, I was lucky enough, it was during the pandemic where I could actually sit down and write the shows and be the room producer and be the director. And I relied on talent that I've known for years and years. So the voice actors are really, really good. And like all of you, they have stopwatches in their heads. And audio description to me is much different in terms of the voice actor than a straight announcing. So I'm not a big fan of a completely dead, lifeless voice. I think you don't want the voice to get in the way of what the filmmaker's intent is, but at the same time, you don't want a monotone description. I firmly believe that. So it's getting voice actors who really understand the tone of the show so that their interpretation can enhance that performance of the actors in the show. That's something that we have believed since the beginning. We've gotten feedback from both clients and viewers that have been really positive in that respect.
And I'm sure that feedback means so much. Going back to those two purposes of AD, you said to serve the audience and to serve the filmmaker. Even if the filmmaker is being represented by maybe another conglomerate or entity or distributor or whatever the filmmaker is in this term, you're getting feedback from the people that you're impacting. And you've brought up intent several times here. It's so exciting to hear you as a creator of audio description talk about that outside of our mostly voice talent talking about intent, how they bring intent to the words and how they deliver the script. Could you go into a little bit about that impact of the audience as far as the experience that you want them to have? If an audience who is using audio description from audio description that you've created, what is serving the filmmaker mean to you?
So we've been lucky enough in that we've been doing a lot of library titles. So from May through December, we did Sopranos and The Wire and Oz and Veep and Entourage. And when you're dealing with a library with a legacy series, you actually have the luxury of understanding, and these are all shows that we had worked on previously for HBO, so we know them intimately, but it gives you the opportunity to really understand the entire arc of the series and where it's going. And when it comes to the voice actors that you're using, it helps them also to, they understand the arc, they understand where the show is going. And so their interpretation can build with the series. Entourage versus Sopranos, for instance, it's a completely different interpretation by both the filmmakers and by everybody who was involved in the production and the finishing and the studio. And that continues on with how we approach the show. Or Veep, one of the cleverest shows probably in the history of television, that read, that interpretation, and the writing, let's not forget the writing of the description, which is critical, all has to try and fit and match. And on a show like Veep, or a show like Sopranos, I mean, that's arguably Sopranos and The Wire are two of the top 1 hours on television ever. We feel a great weight of responsibility to have our writing get as close to the level. We're never going to be David Chase or the writers on Sopranos or the creator of Veep. We're not that good, but we certainly strive to serve them well. One of the things that we do with regard to writing is, especially when we've got a series, is we create first a style guide, and then we create a Bible for the different writers, and we'll assign 2 or 3 writers to each series. So to have continuity, we create a style guide and a Bible with regard to everything from, how to reference people's homes or where they're working or the locations they're at. So there's always continuity. And then we also, on all these shows, every script gets reviewed and edited. And typically that's my job or another writer / room producer's responsibility. So the writers have a reference of how we like it done. And typically I'll write, or another one of our top writers will write the pilot episode as a reference for everyone else in terms of style and pace and how much to fit in. You don't want to over describe because that'll exhaust the audience. And you don't want to under describe, and really understanding what are the crucial elements. You also don't want to interpret. You never want to be putting your point of view in front of the actor's performance or the filmmaker's intent. That's really critical. That's hard for some writers to do because they're interpreting. We don't want to interpret. We want to support. We want to be clear and to be concise and, again, to be impactful. So our process is the writers have the style guide and the Bible, and they write, and then everything gets reviewed and edited, every piece of copy. And then when we record, and this just goes back to how I learned to do it all those years ago, we're recording the talent live with the recordist slash mixer on the board with a room producer in the room. So between the three eyes and ears, we catch errors if there are errors, if something doesn't quite fit or doesn't feel quite right. We've got the writer, room producer in the room with the talent right there and the recordist right there. So you've got three brains that are highly experienced who can make changes on the fly so everything works properly and efficiently. And it really supports the end product being at a higher level than if it were done, by somebody alone. I think it's incredibly unfair to be giving voice talent copy and having them have to record it and fit it without having somebody there to sort of enhance the process. Or I think it's just wrong to have the person who is mixing it not have the luxury of also having recorded it, because they're going to be more familiar with it. And it's not, the more people that you add to the process at different times, the more opportunity there are for mistakes or for work that's not at a really, really high level. And, I can also say that HBO has been a client of ours since 1987. So I grew up with them, and they've always maintained an incredible level of quality and demanded it. And I'm very fortunate that I was able to learn that from them as I was starting out in the business, because we try to maintain that same level of integrity and quality in everything we do. So we tried to design our process so that it would enhance and impact the audience, carry through the filmmaker's intent, and create a really efficient process on our side to do this in a manner that makes sense, and from a business point of view also makes sense.
One of the things I'm hearing throughout this conversation is by building your version of audio description delivery, the process that you're going through, everything that you've just shared, that the quality, the integrity, that high level that you talk about, it's coming from a place of deep care and experience, your professional experience working in promo and all the other aspects that you've contributed, whether it's from 1987 with HBO to all the other clients, that those two, if I could, core values, I might be putting words into your mouth here, but serving the audience and serving the filmmaker, that those things are coming together in a way that it doesn't sound like you're cutting corners, but you're being efficient. And I'm fascinated by this conversation, in that so many companies who are talking about audio description are doing different things differently in ways that are contributing to this focus on what quality means. You've gave so many incredibly great examples of what quality means, of this high level. Why didn't you decide to cut corners? It sounds like the stakes were really high by you saying, hey, we're going to give this to you for free if it doesn't work. That's putting yourself in a position of having to give yourself, why focus on this high level of integrity and quality? And like, what's the, because it would be a lot easier and probably a lot cheaper to cut some corners here.
Yeah, that was a decision that I made 40 years ago when I got in the business, which is there's no longevity in doing it wrong or in doing it cheap. And, the budgets are the budgets. So those of us who were lucky enough to be in the business in the 80s and early 90s, when I felt like I should be wearing a mask every time I cashed a check from a client because budget was not an issue at all. So I didn't complain then, and I'm not complaining now about budgets as everything has become much more budget focused and centric. But having said that, the one thing that can't change is the level of quality and care that we take, that anybody working in the business who's lucky enough to be doing that, the number one core value should be delivering quality, or at least trying to. It's not like we can hit a home run every at bat, but our intent always is to deliver the highest level of quality we can. And as budgets are more constrained, it's incumbent upon me as the owner of the company to figure out a better process. So even though we're a creative boutique, we are incredibly process driven, because what we found is if you really drill down and you put processes in place, that allows you to be more creative at the end of the day, because you know what the process is. So the challenge then is, how can we creatively, you're not worried about the nuts and bolts anymore because there's a process in place every step of the way. What your creative people are worried about is making the most impact and finding the most creative solutions to the whatever the issues in front of them are, whether that's on the picture side or the audio side or visual effects or audio description. And for instance, what we've discovered now on the library work, they've all been captioned typically. And we haven't offered captioning as a service before. On first run shows, what we're finding is the clients are bundling the audio description with the captioning. So in the next 2 weeks, and we've been working on this for a while, we're going to begin offering captioning. Not particularly interested in, that's a hard business to actually make any margin on, but we're going to be offering it to get the audio description work. So the clients will be able to send it to us and bundle it. And we're going to follow the same rules and the same values in captioning as we do in audio description, which is try to do it as efficiently as possible and not worry too much about the margin, because the margin will be what the margin is. But as long as you continue to do really good work, and on the audio description side, creatively good work that satisfies the viewer and the filmmakers and ultimately the studio, the work will continue.
One of the things I heard in that solution of now including captioning in your package is that if we could drill in a little bit, and I don't want to put you on the spot here, is there a
Okay.
challenge that you found in audio description, the process or the creation, that was particularly unexpected and you are really proud of the solution that you came up to with that problem? Is there some sort of challenge you could talk about?
It was all a challenge because, like everything else that I've done in the business, I had never done anything until I did it for the first time. And the first few shows we did took longer, and I was writing them, so they took longer to write and sort of edit my writing and figuring out. I mean, after years of promo, I have a pretty good sense of how many words fit into a 3-second hole or a 4-second hole. I would say the biggest challenge that we overcame has to do with main titles and end credits. It should be the simplest thing in the world, but what we discovered was, what we started doing, especially on the series, we would record the first episode on the main title and then reuse it. And that's a really bad idea, because oftentimes in a show, mid-season, the producers will change, or sometimes the casting people change. So the challenge was, we can't keep making this mistake. And the solution was, you know what, just take the extra 2 minutes or 3 minutes or 5 minutes and record each main title for each and every episode, regardless of whether it's the same or not. And with regard to end credits, it really required, just after recording the end credits, stopping, taking the time, playing it back, making sure on every show that, the end credits are correct, that the copyright is correct, that the logos are correct, because that was sort of a stumbling block, that we were trying to be too efficient, and we learned it just, you can't get too clever. You just have to spend the time to make sure that everything is absolutely correct.
Thanks for sharing that. That's really specific and so helpful. It's something that I'm sure a lot of people hadn't thought of.
Yeah, the credits, if you don't pay hyper attention to the credit, and we were doing that even on the writing side. So every script we'd get in, I would go through and double check every main title credit and every end credit. The error that we were making was not doing that as we were recording. So the solution was, you know what, if we're doing it when we're doing the writing, let's just take that extra 5 or 10 minutes on every show and make sure that it's perfect, because it's a lot easier than going back and correcting it after it's delivered.
Very nice. Well, with all this, you've given a great history of where you and your company have taken audio description. Where would you like audio description to go forward, either as a cultural override or specifically with your company's contribution? Where would you like to see things headed?
There's a lot of good audio description that's out there, and there's a lot of really mediocre or bad audio description also. I think right now, a lot of clients are viewing it as a box that needs to get checked, and they're less concerned with the overall quality. Just like early captioning was not nearly as good as it is today. And today, more and more people are doing SDH captioning, which is, I think, an improvement. And I think we're on an arc where audio description will be, I would hope, will be viewed as a much more important element in the process by the clients as there's more and more of it. And, they're all fighting for those subscribers, for the same subscribers. So I think that the visually impaired audience is an important audience, and it's a sizable audience. And it seems like everyone is realizing that. And I would hope moving forward, there is a continued emphasis on really good quality audio description that has being done by people and not automated voices. There's some of that out there now. So my hope and goal is to have the level of quality and importance of audio description improve and be recognized by the filmmakers and the clients, and to have it be a critical component of everything that's airing or streaming right now.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Is there anything
You're,
else you'd like to share with our audience?
no, just that good things come out of pandemics, I guess. And for us, it's an incredibly satisfying, fun, creative outlet. It's not often that you get so many disparate elements that are creative and challenging that come together in one specific task on a project. And audio description really is that item that allows for a lot of creativity, a lot of input, work, and it's very satisfying both creatively and in terms of the impact that we know it has. And we feel very lucky to have found this, gotten into it, and been able to develop a process that's really impactful, efficient, and hopefully makes a difference to the audience.
You make it sound so delicious.
Not what we do. I've been doing this a long time, and I feel very lucky, even in the ups and downs of being able to be in a business where I so enjoy it, as do my staff and our clients. My attitude always is find something you love to do, and you're never working a day in your life. And for me, show business in general and post production specifically has been that totem that I can cling to. It's not always fun, but it's always satisfying.
That's great, and the love's coming through, Seth. It's been really clear just in this whole interview, and also your history that you've shared. How can we reach you? Social media, websites, that sort of thing?
5moes, MOES.com, snackablevideo.com. We're located in the TV Academy building in North Hollywood, 818-753-7500. We'd love to hear from anyone.
Thanks so much for this, Seth.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.